Drive Time with Katie Hannon and Colm O'Mungoyne on RTE Radio 1.
Now, if you're coming back from the shop or you're heading to the shop this evening, we do want to hear from you. 0870 32 32 32 for your WhatsApps and 51551 for your texts, because you've either already felt the pain of going to the till or you're certainly not looking forward to reaching the till. But if you are feeling that pain, we're not alone here in Ireland in feeling it in the cost of living crisis. We're going to hear now from three people, journalists, with their experiences in Spain, Germany and the US. But first, back home, our reporter Una Kelly asked people in Dublin city centre where they're feeling the pinch when it comes to groceries.
Particularly on meats, definitely on meats, chicken especially, gone up a good bit. Definitely fruit, berries, things like this. They're grown in Ireland, I don't see why there's such a huge increase on them. Everything's going up, you know yourself.
Oh, everything's up, yeah. I noticed the fruit and vegetables all gone up. There's like about 29 cents on packets of 6 apples or packets of oranges, yeah. Well, your weekly shop is gone now. Like what you would have got a trolley load of stuff for €100 you'd only have like half a trolley now for that, so it definitely has gone up double.
Went up in COVID, never come down. But when things go up and they don't come down, we were all getting fleeced every day of the week. We know it. For me now, I retired a couple of years ago after 36 years here. Almost 3/4 of my time now is left in Spain, simply because of the cost of living. That's it.
Even for the most basic things, even butter, all dairy produce, it's really, really frightening that, we go for the cheaper ones now. And now there's one thing about turkey, the bird flu, avian flu, it is a little bit worrisome for people.
Butter, sugar, tea, milk. Yeah, milk has gone up. Biscuits, everything. We look for deals. I look for, bargains.
Meat definitely has gone up, like the price of steaks and chicken, the things that have gone up in groceries. For nappies, I haven't noticed too much on nappies, but wipes are expensive. And in general now he's starting to eat solids. So actually as a family, our grocery bill is getting bigger.
All right, meat, poultry, dairy, fruit, coffee, biscuits, chocolate, take your pick. We're going to go to Spain. Sarah Morris, good evening to you.
Good evening.
So any of those things sound familiar? What are the big cost of living issues in Spain at the moment?
Well, it sounds very familiar because we've just seen coffee, for instance, go up 20%, the latest inflation figures. Meat's up 17%, eggs up 18%. The price of the shopping basket is something that Spaniards complain about more and more often, and it's particularly on those big items that they would think of as forming part of the Mediterranean diet. They had a little bit of good news, I can tell you, recently on olive oil, because that had hit record levels. They were paying what they thought was astronomical, 10 or 12 euros for a 5-litre bottle last year.
Well, bad harvest, was it?
It was a bad harvest, these droughts, but that's gone down 34% because they've had a good harvest, and that for Spaniards absolutely crucial.
And has there been any response to it from government? Any cost of living package, any price caps? What are they doing?
Very much so, because this was a socialist left-wing coalition, still is. And when they could pass these laws through the parliament, one of the things they did was they suspended the VAT on some of these big items that they considered to be basics, olive oil, a whole basket. They decided on the items and they cut the VAT. They think that had some effect. And they're now easing off on those cuts. And the other thing that they did was they looked at the energy prices, the energy mixed, and they reduced the VAT on that. A bit of good luck for Spain with this very hot weather that they've had is that renewables, solar energy, that is bringing down some of the costs. But unfortunately, Spaniards still feel that they are under the pinch because of stagnant wages, really. They just feel that they don't get a big enough hike on their salaries to make it easy enough for them to afford their shopping.
And what about transport? People in their cars, people on public transport?
That is another thing that the government tried to help out with because of the increase in fuel costs. They said, well, if people get onto the trains and the buses, we will pick up most of the price of their tickets. And for instance, I live in Madrid. I have one of these monthly passes. It's about 42 euros a month, and for that I could travel anywhere I wanted on the bus, on metro. But as some of those subsidies have come off, so I could go that for 42 euros. They were subsidising that for half the price, and I was paying about 20 euros. That has just gone back up. And one of the reasons is the government now does not have a majority in the parliament. It's harder and harder to get these kind of saving measures through the parliament.
Okay, well, we might come back to you on housing another day, Sarah Morris, but thanks very much for that from Spain.
Now, let's go over to Germany, where we have Arthur Sullivan. Good evening, Arthur.
Good evening, Katie.
Arthur, you're there with Deutsche Welle. How is the grocery situation there? Do you see a big increase in your bill?
Well, the situation in Germany is quite similar to what was just painted there in terms of Spain. So just today, the latest monthly inflation figures came out, and just like some of your Irish listeners were reporting earlier, and just like from Spain, it's things like meat and fruit which have which have seen the most significant increases recently. Meat products up 4% just in the last month, fruit up 3%, and then confectionery and particularly chocolate up 21% just in the last month alone. In contrast, some of things have come down again, like what was reported there in Spain, things like olive oil coming down from record highs, down 22%, butter down 16%, but they've been down from huge highs, which they went up obviously in the years since the pandemic, gradually along with other groceries. And I think there's just a general trend since the pandemic in Germany, and since in particular the war in Ukraine, of these hugely significant price increases that people notice at the till. And an awful lot of that has been indeed driven by energy price increases.
Yeah, and just before we leave the groceries, I know we talk about the price of a pint here as, you know, as sort of a marker of how things are going on the cost of living front. The doner kebab is what you talk about there in Berlin.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, a bit like the price of a pint, not necessarily the most healthy option, but definitely a staple in the national diet here. It's the most popular sort of, I suppose, street food, if you call it that, or snack. And there is a sort of an informal doner kebab price index that people pay quite close attention to. So just 8 or 9 years ago, again, it's a bit like the price of a pint in Ireland. 8 or 9 years ago, you could get a doner kebab for maybe 3 or 4 euros. And it's a very popular thing because, you know, students could afford it. People on their breaks from work, regardless of what they were doing, could afford it. People might get it after having a few drinks. But now you're looking at 7, 8 euro for the price of a doner kebab. So it's gone up by almost 100% in 7, 8 years. Right. And so it's really symbolic, I suppose, of that cost of living issue, that something that was associated with being cheap, being quick, being affordable is now actually something that you have to put your hand in your pocket significantly more than you used to have to do.
Yeah, and you were touching on it there a minute ago. Energy, that's really gone up there, hasn't it?
Yes, I think, Germany has been, every country in Europe has been affected by what happened with the war in Ukraine in terms of energy, but none more so than Germany. And that's reflected in various things we can see. So just for starters, Germans or people living in Germany pay the highest household electricity prices in the EU, and they have done now consistently since the war in Ukraine. And that's because Germany was very, very dependent on Russian gas, more dependent than almost any other country in Europe, certainly any other large economy. And they've obviously had to, as the whole of Europe has largely had to do, diversify to other more expensive gases, LNG coming in from America and other places. And that has just seen energy prices, energy costs, heating costs, electricity costs go up dramatically. Now, they've come down from huge highs in 2022, 2023, but they're still way up from what they were before the invasion and indeed before the pandemic. And that obviously has a trickle-down effect on everything, because when companies are paying more for their energy, their costs go up, and a lot of those costs have to be passed on to the consumer. And then people are seeing it at the petrol pump, and they're seeing it in their household heating and electricity bills. And
very quickly, Arthur, the housing, rents, where are they at now in Berlin? Because it used to be obviously famously very affordable to rent in Berlin.
Indeed, yeah. After the Berlin Wall came down, obviously it's a long time ago now, but for the guts of 20 years after that, Berlin was famously a cheap place to come and live, as there was so much surplus housing in the city. But that's changed completely. So over the last decade or so, rent prices, and bear in mind, Berlin is a city of renters. The vast majority of people here still rent. Rent prices have gone up by 100% or 150% in some cases over the last decade. and housing supply is really, really tight. There's a large number of people coming into the city every year. It's between 40 and 50,000 people, in fact, every year. And just like we have the problem in Ireland, housing supply is not catching up because, again, costs of construction, complications around planning are meaning that there's not enough houses being put forward. Prices are maybe not quite, house prices are not quite as severe a problem as they are in Ireland, but it's still a problem here.
Okay.
And there are stricter rent controls in Berlin than there may be in Ireland. But again, it still isn't holding back the general trend, which is that prices of housing has gone up in Berlin and indeed other large cities across Germany.
Okay, Arthur, thanks for that. That's Arthur Sullivan there in Berlin. And just one quick text there. Groceries are not only gone up, but all products weigh less and in smaller packets. And that's something I think we've all noticed as well.
All right, somebody reacting to Sarah Morris's text there from Spain. Another texter, Shelley from Spain, saying, I've been living in Spain for the last 2.5 years. I lived in Alicante in the south and now I'm living in Madrid. Cost of food is the same in both regions. Berries and forest fruits over here are no cheaper than in Ireland. Things like oranges, apples, watermelon being cheap because they're not imported, but anything else is quite expensive. Things like milk and any health-related product like proteins or meats also on a par with Ireland from my experience. Somebody else reporting an Americano in Palma near Mallorca, 140 for an Americano there. Right across the Atlantic to the States, where Simon Marks is standing by on the line. He's chief correspondent with Feature Story News. Simon, you're probably getting as hungry as I am listening to the shopping baskets of food as we hear them on the line, particularly the doner kebab from Berlin. But we heard about the price of eggs during the last general election in the US. There seemed to be a kind of a political discontent index linked to eggs. How's that now?
Yes, I'm actually craving an evening in Alicante, Colin. But look, I mean, there's the fantasy world in which President Trump currently lives here in the United States, insisting that food prices are tumbling. In some cases, he says, by as much as 700%. I'm never quite sure what that maths means. And then there's the reality. Now, it is true to say that the price of eggs has come down from where they were back in March, when they hit a high point of just over $6 for an average dozen of eggs here in the United States. But that was fueled by an outbreak of salmonella. The outbreak of salmonella was brought under control, and so the price of eggs has indeed come down. I've just got my receipt from the weekend here. We paid at our local supermarket $5.49 for a dozen eggs, which I think is about €4.75. So the price has undoubtedly come down, but it is still higher than at any point that it has been since July of 2024. And as I say, there is this sort of fantasy versus reality underway here. And any American can literally go to the US government's own Department of Agriculture website and read that food prices are rising faster than overall inflation. In 2025, overall food prices are anticipated to rise faster than the historical average rate of growth, says the USDA website, with prices for all food predicted to increase 3% this year. So these claims that food prices are tumbling are not matched even by the data on the Department of Agriculture's own website, and they're certainly not felt by American consumers.
All right, Simon Marks, chief correspondent of Feature Story News. Thanks for joining us on that. News coming up.